What are you thankful for on day 17 of 30 Days of Thanks? And who is it that you know in your heart you should forgive? In 1996, there was this homeless couple in Santa Rosa living out of their automobile. And I began to get into conversations with these people, became friends with them. And one day he took me aside and he says, I love my wife so much. And he says, and I love her more than I ever have. And I asked him, why? And he told me. It was right around the year 29 AD, way back in history. Over 2,000 years ago, Jesus told this story, a parable. He talked about this man who had two sons, and he was wealthy. And one of his sons couldn't stop spending, wanted to consume a lot. And in that process, he went to his father one day and he says, you know, I don't know how long you're going to live, Father. He says, and I really want to have my inheritance. Would you give me my inheritance now so that I can spend the money the way I want to? So the father divided up the estate with his sons in the ownership and gave him the money that he had coming to him. And the son quickly took off. And as he did, he began to spend and spend and spend, and he started getting in with women and prostitutes and spending a whole lot of money doing things that had no real importance, and came time his money was gone. And he finally got a job working as a swine carer. He would take care of the pigs. And as he was taking care of the pigs, he had very little food and nobody would give him anything. And he started to think of how wonderful it was when he lived in this father's house, and how now he was happy to eat the food that the pigs were being fed. And he thought, he says, these servants of this man live better than I do. He says, and the servants in my father's house live way better than I do. He says, and I want to go back to my father. I was so wrong to do what I've done. I've got to go back and talk to my father. So I don't know if he'll accept me, but maybe he'll take me in as a servant. So he traveled back. And as he was still coming down the road, his father was looking out. Who knows how many times he looked out to see if he could see his son one more time. But this time he did, and he saw his son, and he ran out to meet him. And he kissed him, and he hugged him. And his son was all dirty, and he says, Father, he says, I've violated you in so many ways. He says, and I don't deserve anything. He says, but would you allow me to be one of your servants so that I can once again eat food and have clothes? His father said, oh, son, I'm so happy to have you back. Servants, go get a ring and bring it to him, and a beautiful coat. Get him a beautiful coat. He says, and kill the fatted calf, and we're going to celebrate because my son, who was lost, is back again. And that night, there was a party, a big party, and a big celebration. And the other son, who had stayed faithfully working all of the years with his father, caring for his father and taking care of his estate, making sure his father was okay, had worked into the night, and as he was coming home, he heard the noise. And as he approached the house, one of the servants said, get in there. He says, there's a party going on. He says, a party what? He says, your brother's back. Your brother's come back, and your father's killed the fatted calf, and we're having a party. And the older brother was so upset. The brother was so upset because his brother had done all of these terrible things, and yet he had been so faithful, and he didn't want to go in. He didn't want to go in, and his father saw him out there. His father, who loved that son, went out and talked to him. And he says, "Come on in, your brother's back." He says, "My brother's back?" He says, "And I've served you all these years. You've never even given me a young calf to celebrate with my friends, and now my brother, who spent all your money, asked for the inheritance early, and you having a party for him?" And the old man looked at him and he said, "Son, I love you. Everything I have is yours. You've always been with me, and now your own brother, who was lost, is back and he's with us. Rejoice, rejoice." So today, as we look at this story that Jesus told, what can we learn about the steps of what it takes to have forgiveness? That man, that rich man, had forgiveness for his son. Didn't have to. But there are components of the person who is forgiven and of the person who forgives. And those combined bring them together again. Because forgiveness is something that is so powerful that if we were to practice it, our whole lives would change. It would be an absolutely amazing phenomenon if the world practiced forgiveness instead of revenge and righteousness and wanting to be better and wanting to compare ourselves with others. When we forgive, we are working on the highest level of love that is possible. So let's talk a few moments, if we may, about what is required of forgiveness. Well, the first one is faith. Without faith, there is no forgiveness. When we look out at the prodigal son and we think about all of what he was going through, and he knew in his mind and believed in his mind that his father had the capacity to forgive him, to give him another chance. He never dreamt that the forgiveness would be so great. But he thought if he could just go back, he had faith that his father was a good father. And when we have faith to forgive somebody, and we all have people we should forgive everybody. And when we do have the faith to forgive somebody, we are looking at the mighty God and trusting that God will take it into his own hands. Because when we say the Lord's Prayer, we say, "Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come. Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us." And that forgiveness causes us to look at the mighty God who's created everything and given us so much. And the first person we can go to ask forgiveness, of course, is God. Because so many times we take our gifts that we have for granted. We live in a world where there's beautiful, fresh air, where there's food, where there's other people to associate with, where there's beautiful trees. And God has given us so much with the sun, the moon, the stars, everything that we have, things to sit on, places to go, waters to look at. sunsets to behold, and so much more. And so many times we just forget it and take it all for granted and don't even talk to God. Would rather have an it for a God. Something that just happened. And yet God forgives us. God forgives us. Gives before expecting anything. The most beautiful example of forgiving, which is the second part of forgiveness, which is forgiveness requires the person who forgives to do something before the person who's asking for the forgiveness can even give anything. The perfect example is the thief on the cross next to Jesus. As Jesus was dying on the cross, just a year after he told this story, as he's dying on the cross, this convict who's next to him asked him to allow him to come into his paradise when he dies. And he's going to die in a few minutes. He had no way of giving anything to Jesus at that moment. But he believed. He believed that Jesus could give him something. He saw the worth of Jesus Christ and the fact that he did come as the Savior, as the Christ. And he said, "Save me." And Jesus said, "Yes, you asked, and I will give. Ask, and you shall receive." Long before the thief could ever give him anything, in fact, he could never give him anything again, Jesus was willing to forgive and to give him paradise as he turned and said, "This day, I assure you, you will be with me in paradise." And so that hope that man had for Jesus, Jesus doubled it, tripled it, quadrupled it, and not only said that he would provide a place for him, he says that you'll be with me in paradise. In my Father's house there are many mansions, he told his disciples a few hours earlier at the Last Supper. He says, if it were not so, I would have told you. And now I go to prepare a place for you, that where I am, you may be also. So as we look at forgiveness today, who are some of the people that you know you have to forgive? Oftentimes it's a parent. It's a mother who mistreated you. Or it could be a father who left and abandoned you. It could be a school teacher who abused you. It could even be a member of a clergy who's offended you in some way, in some cases very, very seriously, as we know. Do we forgive? Have we found it in our hearts to have that faith that we can't produce? We can't get those good feelings of forgiveness, but we know that this God that's made all these things can. And that's where the faith comes in. When we understand that the God who made the heavens and the earth and your very skin, and the fact that we can communicate by hearing, the brain assimilating the information from the vibrations in the ear, you can hear my voice and understand what I'm saying right now. This God that created all of these wonders says that if we forgive, he will work miracles. I know, because I had that miracle happen just today. I was walking by the young man with his wife in the car, and he was telling me how much he loved his wife more than ever. Why, I asked, and he said, because she's forgiven me. But not just once. She's forgiven me twice. He had cheated on his wife one time, and it caused the schism between them. And he was heartbroken that he had caused so much pain for her. And after some time, she forgave him. She had the faith. And these two people really believed in the Lord at this point when I was talking with them. But she had the faith that God would work it out if she would just forgive him. It was hard on her, but she had love for the man. She had love and trust in God, and that God would do the work if she would have the forgiveness. And he came back, and then he did it again. Again. He was heartbroken. She was heartbroken. She was broken up. She'd given him 2 chances. And she prayed one more time and had a hope that God would work a miracle. She forgave him again. And this time, he said to me, he says, it's been years now since that happened. We've had some good times and we've had some bad times, and we've lost our apartment and we're out in the streets. But I'll tell you one thing, I stick by my wife, and I love her more than I've ever loved her, and she loves me more than she's ever loved me. And he said to me, Bob, I will tell you, if you think that you appreciate somebody forgiving you, when somebody forgives you the second time, you love them even more.